When shopping for headlights on the Ford Bronco, I couldn't help but notice that form lighting's light, when they're off, looks exactly like the Alpharex Nova Series headlight. So in this video, I wanted to compare both of them, see if the brightness is the exact same, see how much different the features really are, and go from there. I'm gonna help you guys try to decide which one's best. First things first, let's get to the outputs. I'm gonna do it the old-fashioned way by backing this truck up 25 feet away from the wall using a digital lux meter, measuring the brightest point on the wall, and then comparing one to another. But then we are going all out by doing the multi-point testing method, where we go from every single location, the foreground, the width, to really dial in which one is best. All right, we're first gonna test this in an old school way with the digital lux meter, and then we're going to test it with that multi-point testing system. The first one I wanna show you is right here. This is the Alpharex on the Bronco. And as you can see, the low beam is pretty good. It looks pretty comfortable to drive with long distances. And I measured 907 maximum lux at the brightest point on this wall. Nobody can argue that that's a really good light output when you're driving down the road, at least from what I can tell. We'll dive into that in a little bit. The form lighting looks like this. When I installed the form light, it looks like this. And as you can see, it's very similar. I did measure 986 maximum lux. So in this case, on low beam, with the digital lux meter, I measured 9% brighter. So low beam's brighter from what I know so far. The Alpharex headlight high beam looks like this. This is the high beam from the Alpharex headlights for the Ford Bronco. I measured 867 maximum lux. Yes, I already know that's less than low beam. It's because they're bi-LED projectors and they just don't use the light like they should when they're punching down the road. You're not getting a real high number. They're using the same projectors for the low beam and high beam. The form lights, as you remember, has that dedicated high beam projector, and oftentimes I see a much brighter high beam with that dedicated projector. As you can see here, I measure 1,838 maximum lux at the brightest point on this wall. So in this case, from this simple test, I measured 112% brighter out of the high beam on the form light versus the Alpharex light. In order to properly test this, I first wanted to compare these to the OEM light that this Bronco came with. I'll post in the comments for exactly how this multi-point testing works, but essentially this is just a really good way to cover the headlight in its entirety. The low road center coverage, the low width coverage, the high distance object illumination, the high distance road projection, and the low distance projection. We're gonna take all 5 of those points and then throw it in an equation to give us a distance zone score, a width score, and an overall rating score for low beam and high beam individually. When I had the OEM light tested by a third party, the distance score on low beam was a 2.4 and high beam was a 5.7 with a width score of 3.6. That gave the OEM lights a rating of about 4.4. Out of about 10, that's not very good at all. Honestly, it's just not a very powerful headlamp. It has a well-balanced low beam output for comfort, and it's got very high uniformity. However, the distance impression is on the modest side. It's more for high comfort at near field. This kind of beam pattern is more so intended for a tall SUV. The high beam distance road projection is great, however, but it's got a weaker distant object illumination above the ground level. The upper illumination design is very refined. It's precisely covered to cover exactly where it's supposed to. Area coverage is very wide, and overall, it's a balanced optical design that checks all the basics. I was really interested to see how this Nova stacked up. On low beam, the distance zone score was a 1.1, and on high beam, it was a 1.2. The width score was 0.9, so not wide at all, with an overall rating of 1.1. You'll notice with this Alpharex headlight that it's got a really cool foreground illumination. However, sometimes when you have that really bright foreground, it actually hurts your visibility in the long distance. I believe that's what's going on here and why low beam is such a low score. You do got a lot of light with that low road center coverage though. I also noticed there is no optical center mark that was present, which means that it's not usually compliant. Overall, you're not gonna go wrong with this headlight housing, especially if you really enjoy that foreground illumination. Just know that you're not gonna see as far down as we'd like. That was pretty brutal and long-winded, but the Ford Bronco headlights did not do much better. I had a low beam score of 3.6, and a high beam score of 1.9 with a width score of 2.0 with an overall rating of 2.0. So the rating on this is much better than the Alpharex. Same for this headlight. There was no optical center mark that was present, which means essentially it's non-compliant. It's really hard to aim something without an optical center mark. The low beam does have an ample road center illumination impression. The distance zone intensity is moderate, but excessive foreground limits its benefits and also masks off a wide impression. Unfortunately, from these tests, we can conclude that the dedicated high beam output is designed incorrectly. It's lacking beam center focus and adding too much foreground that reaches too low, creating overlap at the 4DV point. That makes high beam foreground value over 4 times the regulation. This high beam is more of a mid-near field area lamp rather than a distance illuminating lamp. As for the low beam, it seems like there's a lot of foreground, it's real heavy, and the aftermarket LED projectors all perform about like this. The separate high beam design is actually a real issue, making the score drop. Talk about make it or break it. The features are very important on a Ford Bronco. We want to stand out. If you're upgrading your headlight, it's not just for better lighting performance, but it's also to stand out. So this is the Alpharex headlight. As you can see, when it's off, it's all blacked out. You can see the ice cube projectors, Alpharex calls them, but when you turn them on, you get something really cool. You get a startup feature, which is probably the coolest thing you can get in a headlight housing today. It does nothing for performance, but it definitely looks good when you're turning on your lights. Here you're gonna also notice the projectors. There's 2 up here and 2 down here. And this is a little bit more unique than the form light that we'll show you in a second, because these 2 down here do both low beam and high beam. So it's a bi-LED projector. I think that's really cool. That means that you got all 4 still on when you're cruising around during the day on low beam. Now, turn signal, let's just hit that really quick. As you can see here, this thing is this beautiful, fluted, consistent, sequential turn signal. After the consistency of the light output emitting from the parking light, that's about it when it comes to good features. Something else to note on the parking light area over here is that this should get brighter when you're driving down the street during the day. That would be your daytime running light. However, on some models, it just doesn't work with this Alpharex headlight. Plug it in, you don't get daytime running light. So oftentimes you will need a DRL harness depending on what trim your Ford Bronco is. The form lighting does come with the DRL harness, but the Alpharex did not. So you can't make this daytime running light any brighter than what you see here. When you turn on low beam, you still have the same brightness. When you turn off low beam, it stays the same. Also, something you guys are gonna wanna know is, can you switch from white to amber, because you hate white. I don't know what it's up with the Ford Bronco owners, but I swear nobody likes running around with a white daytime running light. Amber is the way to go for all the off-road boys out there, and you can switch, but that's another downfall of the Alpharex headlight, is you have to pop the hood, pull the grill, remove the entire headlight housing, and then change it on the back side of this housing. Once you switch that, then you can put it all back together, and then you get your amber daytime running light. Now I know straight away you're gonna say the exact same thing about the form headlight as I did. That thing looks exactly like the Alpharex headlight, almost a spitting image. However, when you turn it on, it's completely different. So we turn it on, you still get a startup feature like this. It dances around, and I think that's really cool. It also looks a lot brighter because I do have that daytime running light connected. Now, the DRL is much brighter than the DRL over there. That's a plus. We still got the 4 projectors. The only downside is when you hit low beam right here, you only got 2 projectors that illuminate. The bottom 2 are not bi-LED projectors, which means that these are dedicated high beam projectors. As you can see, these are dedicated high beam projectors only. That is pretty cool for performance. However, when you're driving around during the day, I'd like to see all 4 of these illuminate, in my opinion. Now on to the parking light or the daytime running light. When you're in parking light mode, it'll look something like this without those 2 projectors. It'll look like this. And then the daytime running light mode, it's much brighter. It illuminates brighter, so when you're driving around during the day without your headlights on, you're going to have that true daytime running light, so it's nice and bright. That's what you want. Again, you don't like the white daytime running light. I get it. Maybe 10% of you do. You could change this, thankfully, and you do not have to rip the front end off again. You don't have to do all of that. It's simple plug on the back side. All you gotta do is pop the hood and locate the wire on the back side that you just had zip tied up, and you can disconnect or connect the wire on the back side, and that'll give you either a white daytime running light or an amber daytime running light. Hitting the turn signal, it looks like this. Same deal. You got that sequential turn signal. But again, the consistency of it, you do start to see these individual LEDs. And personally, I like the fluted look of the Alpharex a little bit better than this. It's not super obvious, but it is there. You see all the individual LEDs shooting through this fluted lens here. To wrap this section up, remember, this is totally preference-based, so I can't tell you this one's best or this one's best, but I'm gonna do my best to tell you guys that in my personal opinion, I like the Alpharex look a little bit better, even though I didn't have a daytime running light, only because of the bi-LED projectors it had. When you're driving around, you have 4 projectors illuminating on each side of your vehicle, it looks a lot better than 2 projectors. From a look standpoint, that's about it that really stands out. They both have a startup feature, they both could switch between amber and white, and I do like the consistency of that DRL a little bit better on the Alpharex. Hopefully that helps you in your buying decision. So after all of that, which one would I recommend? To be honest, this is the hardest decision. I just had a full-on debate with everybody on camera. I had a full-on debate with everybody over there. The original Bronco owner, our good friend that drives this thing all the time, we don't know which one we would rather have. Both of them are pretty unique in their own right. This one has a brighter daytime running light. This one doesn't go into daytime running light mode on this vehicle. This one back here, the Form Light, only uses 2 LED projectors for low beam. I think that's a fail. These have all 4 for low beam. Also the brightness. You saw everything there on the wall. I'm gonna let you make the decision as to which one's best. The cool part is we put both of these at headlightrevolution.com, so check them out. Also check out the 4 bangers, the off-road pod lights, everything else that we've came out for the Ford Broncos. If you wanna see better at nighttime, or if you wanna see better down the trail, go to headlightrevolution.com today.